In November of 2018, Rachael Rollins was elected District Attorney of Suffolk County, getting 80% of the vote, having run on a platform of ending racial disparities and reforming the criminal justice system. She served there until January of 2022, when President Biden nominated her to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts. She was then confirmed by the U.S. Senate. 16 months later, she resigned following investigations by two federal watchdog agencies. Rollins is now running in the Democratic primary to reclaim her position as District Attorney for Suffolk County against her successor and incumbent, Kevin Hayden, and two other declared candidates. This is her first interview since announcing her campaign. Rachael Rollins, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
So, Rachael, why run for public office again?
Well, Shirley, I believe in public service, right? I believe in the Suffolk County District Attorney's office. When I had the privilege of leading that office in 2019 to 2022, we were the most innovative and exceptional DA's office in the country, hands down. And I believe we've lost that. We are lacking inspiration, we are lacking leadership, and we're lacking transparency, right? Under my leadership in this office, we had the first in the nation discharge integrity team. We had a community member involved in overseeing officer-involved shootings or excessive force matters. That would have been helpful, I think, with the Stevenson King and Officer O'Malley situation. Under my leadership, we had the first grand jury up in the United States of America during COVID. Under my leadership, I'm the first DA in the nation to have argued that mandatory life sentences for emerging adults, people 20 and under, were unconstitutional, a decision that our state Supreme Judicial Court upheld in the Mattis and Robinson cases. The list goes on and on. We had data and we had written policies. Those things aren't happening right now. We had a 20-year low in homicides. I believe Suffolk County deserves leadership that is innovative, that is not maintaining. We are going back to times of 15 or 20 years ago, and I think the people of Suffolk County deserve better than that, and that's why I'm running.
So to hire you, they obviously have to fire Kevin Hayden. You didn't use his name, but you said we're going back to 15 or 20 years ago. How has Hayden taken the office back 2 decades?
Well, first and foremost, his hero is Dan Conley. Ask him.
A prior Suffolk County DA.
The Suffolk County DA that I met with back in 2018 to say, I'm going to run for your spot. I respect you enough to look you in the face and tell you that. He promptly resigns and then puts up a candidate that he gives all his support to, and we beat him too. But I just believe that we deserve more. Let's look at the...
What does that mean concretely? What is it that we're not getting that...
Well, let's talk about Stevenson King and Officer O'Malley. Jim and Shirley, back in 2022, when DA Hayden was running for office as an incumbent, right, having not earned that spot, he was given it like a lot of DAs are, so nothing against him. The MBTA Police Department went ballistic because of his inappropriate conduct. There was tons of Globe coverage about it, et cetera. We find ourselves right now in 2026. The Boston Police Patrolmen's Association has called for people to run against the incumbent DA because of the way he's handling the Stevenson King and Officer O'Malley situation. There are no protocols at all in this office. Nothing is written down. There is a problem with that, I promise you, when you can't point to a policy to say, I hate you, Jim Braude, because you said this. At least I can point to it. You get different outcomes every time if we don't have written policies.
So, when you were DA, you were on this vanguard of the progressive prosecutor movement, and you talked about some of the results. But since then, some DAs who embrace this, they're backing away from that. Has your position changed on that?
Well, let's be clear, Shirley, and we love the media, right? But I'm listed as a progressive DA. Progressive just means I'm willing to look and change things, right? That's the definition of progressive. But I'm the DA back in 2019, 2020, 21, and into 2022. Let's talk about Tyler Brown, right? I'm the DA, the progressive DA, that said 10 to 12 years for this person because he does not deserve a soft sentence. I'm the progressive DA that people want to label as somebody who nobody goes to jail. You know who needed to go to jail? Prison, actually, not jail. Tyler Brown, right? Because he had been escalating, et cetera. So I reject that narrative. I agree that many of the DAs that had been listed as progressive aren't still in their roles. Some
of them have been voted out of office.
Others resigned. So the Cook County, elected prosecutor left on her own volition. But you're right. Some have been voted out. Some have been indicted. I'm not going to shy away from that.
Let's talk about your next job. You stepped down. You're nominated for U.S. Attorney from Massachusetts. You're confirmed by the Senate. You stepped down 16 months after you took the job after findings from 2 federal watchdog agencies are released. Let me read some of the findings, if I may, and get your response. Rollins used her position as U.S. Attorney in an effort to influence the outcome of a partisan political election, saying that Hayden was under possible federal investigation to help your candidate Arroyo. Quote, knowingly and willfully made a false statement under oath and lacked candor. You denied being the anonymous source, law enforcement source for the Herald. Ultimately, you admitted it when your texts were shown. You violated the Hatch Act, not only in an attempt to influence the election, but by attending a Democratic National Committee fundraiser for Jill Biden without required department approval and contrary to ethics advice you received. The U.S. Office of Special Counsel said your Hatch Act violations, Rachael Rollins, were among the most egregious transgressions that they had ever investigated. Why are these not disqualifiers for a public prosecutor candidate?
Well, first and foremost, I need to make sure that you understand the difference between administrative policies and laws, right? So the Hatch Act is a law. Laws can either be civil or criminal. I know you're a lawyer, Jim. I'm talking to just
sort of a lawyer. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to ask any more about that. But civil or criminal, right? There were no judges involved in this. There was no process involved in this. So I think when you read from a report where there was no trial, there was no discovery, there was no access to any information, right? The Sixth Amendment allows you to, have access to your witnesses and cross-examine.
You didn't have an opportunity to respond to these
I had no information about this. I did not know who any of the witnesses were. I was not told their names, right? I was not given a readout of what they said. I've never received discovery. Jim, I didn't even get a copy of my own tapes of my own voice. They gave me a redacted transcript after we appealed and made a FOIA request for my information. So I want to level set and make sure, and I will answer all those questions, but you are acting as if I was presented with a complaint, got discovery, was able to cross-examine witnesses, put on my case.
Respectfully, I'm not doing that. I'm just reading their findings.
I'm aware, but
are you conceding that? Are you suggesting that none of these findings are accurate?
No. What I'm saying is, I need you to understand, it is a written report that I did not have access to any information.
How about the findings?
What I will say is, I contest a lot of those findings. For example, the Hatch Act violation, which is what opened the door for the Office of Inspector General to come in. I did not even know Jill Biden was coming to Massachusetts. My office brought me this opportunity. Why would I ever believe that my office would bring me an opportunity to meet the First Lady of the United States? And it was unethical to do so.
Okay, but how about, do you lie under oath about?
I have never lied under oath.
You didn't represent that you didn't know who you were not the law enforcement source for the Herald?
Over 15 times when I was asked a question about that, I said, I need to look at my information and my phone. I will get my information and I will answer that to you. I did not destroy evidence. I turned over voluntarily everything that I had. But Jim, there were multiple people calling the Herald and the Globe, by the way, about what was happening in the office with respect to an investigation. And I was being told by Herald reporters that we are being told you're not going to look into this investigation.
Okay, then if I may, let's flip it on its head. Which of these findings that I read do you concede are accurate, or is it none of them?
No, what I'm saying, Jim, is I would never behave in a rogue fashion without having received guidance from the office. Can I just explain to you?
Well, could you answer my question first, if you don't mind? Okay,
so let's talk about the Hatch Act. I was told, and I'm reading from here, as she has been advised, she may not attend the fundraiser, provide remarks of any kind, or discuss policy or legislation on July 14th. That's what I was told that I can't do. I didn't do any of those three things.
Okay, let's leave the Hatch Act. You use your position, they say, as U.S. Attorney in an effort to influence the outcome of a partisan political election. You didn't suggest that Kevin Hayden was under possible investigation to
No.
undercut him and to help Arroyo?
After the election was over, 3 days after the election was over, on September 9th, after being told multiple times they had a source in the office saying you weren't going to do anything, I said, you're talking to the leader of the office. We're going to at least investigate this. And Jim, hold on. Go back to that time. There was nothing happening but articles about the DA at the time releasing juvenile sex victims' personal information. That is atrocious
Okay, so
behavior.
my last question about this, I want to defer to. So of the three things I read to you, you concede that none of them are accurate, legitimate findings?
No,
against
I'm
you?
not. What I'm saying, Jim, is you are implying as if I did not have clearance, I was rogue.
I'm not implying anything. I'm reading verbatim what they said, and I'm asking you, again, Rollins used their position as U.S. Attorney in an effort to influence the outcome of a partisan political election. You knowingly and willfully made, these are not my words, they're theirs, made a false statement under oath and lacked candor.
Well, let me be clear.
You concede either of those?
I'm saying that.
You concede either of those?
But wait a minute. Let me finish.
Okay, sure.
I guess you are a lawyer, right? Okay. So, and this is actually what would have happened
Go
had
right
my
ahead.
matter been
Okay.
in front of a judge, right? Is I would have been able to ask questions like that. So the Office of Inspector General believed that I was not truthful to them. The Office of Inspector General is an administrative agency. They can't prosecute civilly or criminally.
Right, part of the
when
DOJ.
when they brought it to real prosecutors, it was summarily dismissed. It was denied. And in fact, they said, we aren't even going to bring it to a grand jury. So I would argue that means that it was not true. Now, the Office of Inspector General is entitled to their opinion. I concede they don't think I was truthful. I believe I was. I will not deny that those are the words there, but what I promise you is I have email after email after email where I asked for permission to do these things and was given guidance. And let me just end by saying one thing.
Any of these findings true?
Any of the findings?
Any of the findings I read to you true?
Here's what I will say. I concede that report is incredibly damning. What I'm saying, Jim, is I am also the DA and the U.S. Attorney that has exonerated Gang Chen, that has exonerated Sean Ellis, who was accused of murder, and he was found guilty by a jury. It was upheld by our Supreme Judicial Court. Every motion was denied. And he would look you in the face and has and said, I was innocent. So all I'm saying, Jim, is I will concede. It is messy. I am embarrassed. I am shameful. I feel deep remorse for some of the behaviors I engaged in. But I promise you, I had emails from DOJ saying, you can do it, just don't do these three things. And why I met with people 8 times for 30 hours is because I really believed I hadn't made a mistake. Clearly, the OIG disagreed. And I do not challenge that at all.
But Rachel, you resigned. I mean, if you thought that you followed the law and there were no violations, then why not fight it and stay in office?
Shirley, that's a great question. I have had 3 confirmed death threats since I was nominated by President Biden. The first one came before I came into office. I actually told the Department of Justice I will not take the job as U.S. Attorney unless the U.S. Marshals give me a security detail. I was given a security detail. The names of the U.S. Marshal were Christopher Kopak and Ashley Clark that followed me. I had the meeting on the first day, and I had 2 months of U.S. Marshal security clearance. That does not happen. They don't follow U.S. attorneys. When I was DA, I had 5 Boston police detectives driving me around all the time. That's one. The second death threat came in May of 2022, immediately after the Tops massacre where 10 black people were murdered. I brought information forward regarding a death threat with my name on it. It referred to me as the first nigger U.S. attorney. It had an AR-15 on the side, and it said the hit list or the list on the side. I told my office and the U.S. Marshals. They said to me, you're overreacting. It's First Amendment. We know now they were wrong because there have been 3 indictments out of California, and all 3 people have been arrested regarding that charge. The last death threat came on May 5th, 2023, when I was the U.S. attorney. The call came in at 10 in the morning. I wasn't told until 3 p.m. Protocols were not followed. And ultimately, Jim, myself An emotionally disturbed person said they were going to come in with a shotgun after screaming my name and calling me a bitch. And when I realized then, Shirley, that the office wasn't following protocols, the marshals hadn't been notified, my life and the life of my children was more important than any job. So on May 5th is when I decided I was not going to work there any longer, because my life and my children's life is more important than any job or my ego or people questioning my character. You have a copy of the document that I forced my office to fill out. You are welcome. I've redacted out the names of people, but 3 confirmed death threats, not of I don't like you, that I'm going to kill you, right? And we have active DOJ cases right now that I'm a victim in. So it was exhausting. And more importantly, Shirley, it was deeply hurtful to me that people that had met my children, right, who had pictures, Victoria drew them on the wall. When I said about not only first nigger U.S. attorney and that threat, but also the second threat almost a year later, I was told I was exaggerating, and I was told that it was not that big of a deal. And that was so hurtful to me that I said, why am I fighting to stay in a place that does not care literally whether I live or die? So that is why I resigned. And of course, Shirley, you know, it wasn't great having an OIG and OSC investigation either, but the reason I stopped was on May 5th. And I started moving things out of my office, my personal belongings. That was a Friday. On Monday, Senator Cotton sent a second letter saying, I hear you're moving things out of your office. I want an investigation into that and someone else in your office. And the DOJ swarmed together to protect that person, and I left.
Why are you not worried this is going to happen all over again if you're elected to be the Suffolk DA?
Well, first of all, when you're the Suffolk DA, you know, I do want to end that story, Jim, that the Boston police on May 5th were exceptional. Right? I was also told by my office, not that the marshals will help me, but don't you know people at the Boston police that you can call? That's not the protocol when somebody's life is threatened for the Department of Justice. But I did call them. They were exceptional. They had round-the-clock people checking my neighborhood.
You feel safer in this
For
position.
sure,
Okay.
I feel safer in that position. And also, Jim, people don't get to, you know who people aren't threatening to kill? Individuals that don't make change, right? If you're mediocre, nobody's threatening to kill you, right? Because you aren't effectuating change. You aren't calling into question things that are troubling and problematic. So look, I will own that this entire situation when I was U.S. Attorney was incredibly messy. I feel profoundly embarrassed. I feel shame, like remorse about what happened. But what is important to me is for you to understand that DOJ policy allows me as the U.S. Attorney to do these things, and I believed I had the authority. Now, whether the people of Suffolk County buy that or not, and then let me just end with, I'm not saying spare me your righteous indignation, but I had breakfast with a girlfriend from Maine yesterday who voted in the election. And we have Platner that just won, who is a Nazi, a racist, sexually harasses his interns. And, you know, the New York Times can gently say, had some weird word. He's a sexual harasser in a superior position. And our own governor has said, he's repulsive. I endorse him. So there's righteous indignation that's happening that, that doesn't mean I shouldn't be held accountable. But there are people that have engaged in conduct. By the way, our own current DA has a state ethics violation, a $5,000 fine for leaking juvenile female sex victims' information to win an election. That is repulsive.
He admitted to that, by the way, as
Did he?
part of the fine thing.
Yeah,
My understanding
exactly.
is he did,
and
yeah.
so make sure he is asked about
Would
things
you
like
vote for
that.
Platner if you were a Maine resident?
That's a really good question. I don't think I would. Right? And I'm not saying it's an easy choice, Jim, but what I want to say is certain people are allowed to be racist, anti-Semite creeps, right? And as long as your wife is but he's my creep, I don't know, right? It's just, some of these things before used to be non-starters, and now we're in a world where they aren't, right?
Would this have happened to you if you were not a black woman in your estimation?
I don't know, Jim. I will leave that for people to understand. Here's what I can say. I think the calls were coming from inside the house, but I also know that, I didn't. I
don't mean the death threats. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. I mean the investigations and the findings. Would they have not happened if?
I don't know, Jim. What I promise is I look back at it, and there are still so many things with all of this, right, that I am so proud of regarding the time that I spent there, that I still have a deep love for this office that for 5 years taught me how to be a lawyer.
Why don't you, we only have a minute left, why don't you tell us what you're most proud of in the final minute if you can?
Oh my God. Okay.
Some.
So,
Quickly.
Gang Chen case, Baptiste Bonsi, Yanjing Chen, and the Bisserath cases, where our office, I think, made egregious mistakes and misconduct, and I think we delivered justice by dismissing those cases. I am most excited about a human trafficking unit that I was told by virtually everyone in the office we didn't need. It is a 4-person full-time office, the only one of its kind and the first in New England. And it is now currently the busiest human trafficking unit in the United States of America. We don't need to be proud about that because it's too much human trafficking, but obviously we needed that there. I loved my letters to Quincy and Everett that I think mattered, calling out, ADA violations and Title VII violations. I'm just so proud of the work that we did. We increased diversity. We hired more veterans. We did tremendous work. And I'm really proud of the things the office is doing now.
I mean, given what happened, though, with all the ethical violations and the Inspector General, there was a trust that was broken. I mean, how can voters trust you again? And how do you keep people's trust?
You literally have 1 minute.
For sure. I mean, Shirley, what I would say is the OIG report, the title of the OIG report is an investigation of alleged misconduct by the United States Attorney Rachael Rollins. I didn't choose the word alleged, they did. There have been no findings. But I will also say your current DA has a state ethics violation that was so egregious that he had to pay a $5,000 fine. There's only one other candidate in the race aside from me. Neither one of us have ever had to pay a fine for anything. I will work hard to regain the trust of the people of Suffolk County. And I believe I am even more qualified today than I was in 2018 because I've done the job, I've proven that I can do the job, and I have all the knowledge of being U.S. Attorney as well.
Rachael Rollins, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, both of you.
Thanks.